Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 patch 2.6.1 Season 15 Demon Hunter build guide. Now with Season 15 being the season of double bounty rewards starting on Friday, i.e. today, and with the free Haedrig's gift set for the Demon Hunter being Unhallowed Essence, my favorite and arguably the best Demon Hunter set, I figured I'd bring you folks a video guide on a speedrunning build for T13 and bounties using the Unhallowed Essence set. Now, if you've already seen my video on the multishot Unhallowed Essence Demon Hunter, then this is a refresher course and gives you some variants specifically for bounty farming. So if you're already familiar with the build and just want a quick crash course, you can follow the link in the video description to the D3 planner to see the skills and gear that we're looking at. But in the video, we're going to explore some additional options that the D3 planner link can't account for. So let's begin by looking at the Unhallowed Essence set. The 2-piece bonus makes our generators generate 2 additional hatred and 1 discipline. The 4-piece bonus gives us a huge amount of damage reduction and a big damage buff if there are no enemies close to us. Specifically, we're talking about 10 yards. For a visual depiction of what 10 yards is, you can go to Act 1, and you'll see that the waypoint circle is about a radius of 10 yards. So this distance right here, that's about 10 yards. Half of a screen is roughly 50 yards. It's about 5 times that. So the full length of the screen is about 100 yards. Half of a screen in any direction, really, while specifically in either horizontal or vertical, is about 50 yards. If you can draw an oval around your character, if you can take this circle or this oval here and expand it to the size of the screen, that is an oval of roughly 50 yards distance. Radius, of course. So back to the Unhallowed Essence set here. The 6-piece bonus makes our generators, multishot, and vengeance deal 100% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. This will be a multishot build, and stacking max discipline will be very important. Also very important will be a Yang's recurve. Multishot attacks 50% faster, and its damage is increased by up to 200%. Now that's a range of 150 to 200. You're going to really try to get as close to 200 as possible. Sometimes you're going to find an Ancient Yang's that's going to have about 153, and you're going to have a non-Ancient Yang's that has 199. In that case, the non-Ancient is actually better. And if you ever have questions as to whether or not something is actually an upgrade or not, because your damage number here on your character sheet does not accurately reflect exactly how much damage you're dealing with a certain skill, you can import your data into d3planner.com and make the changes there, and it'll do the calculations and tell you exactly what difference you're going to see in your multishot damage. And then of course we also need a Dead Man's Legacy. Multishot hits enemies below 60% health twice, and its damage is increased by again up to 200%. So those are the essentials to any multishot build. Our other options here will be helping our build, and one thing we're going to put in our cube is Pride's Fall. Now, Pride's Fall is a helm that you cannot get as a random world drop. It can only come from Act 3 bounty bags, or Act 4, but only because Act 4 can have the items of any other act. Your resource costs are reduced by 30% after not taking damage for 5 seconds. And with this speed build, we're going to ideally be avoiding taking damage ever, because we're going to be clearing things from a screen away. We have some other options that we can run with here, and we'll cover those in a little bit. Now, very important to a multishot build is the Dawn. This highly reduces the cooldown on Vengeance, and we're going to want to maintain 100% uptime on Vengeance. We'll discuss the cooldown breakpoints on how to make that happen. You will need to get some cooldown on your gear. Then we're going to go with our speedrunning trifecta of toughness-related items, the Avarice Band, the Gold Wrap, and the Boon of the Hoarder Gem. The Boon of the Hoarder Gem makes more gold drop, and the Avarice Band makes it so that every time you pick up gold, your gold pickup radius increases. This means you're spending less time going around to mouse over or pick up gold or even globes. And lastly, the Gold Wrap gives us more armor every time we pick up gold. So huge toughness buff that we get going here. We're going to throw in a Hellfire Amulet. The Demon Hunter has some really good passives, so this allows us to squeeze in a 5th. Then of course, we're rounding things out with a Focus and Restraint. This more than doubles our damage, and we'll be able to maintain this buff at all times. And we'll toss in some Nemesis Bracers. This is mostly for doing T13 Rifts though. By spawning more elites, you are getting more progress globes, and you're also getting more Death's Breath. So if you want the Death's Breath as well, you can keep these for running bounties. Otherwise, you can go with Warzekian Arm Guards here if you just want even more speed. Warzekian Arm Guards make it so that every time you break a destructible object, you're going to gain a burst of speed. And since we're spraying multishot everywhere, we're going to be wrecking objects all the time. Now, another option here is to get Wraps of Clarity rather than Nemesis Bracers. This will give us even more damage reduction. That might be overkill with how much toughness we're going to have, so if you go that route, you could even drop your trifecta of items that give you toughness from gold. If you do that, you could instead wear a Krelm's Buff Belt, which gives you a significant speed boost if you haven't taken damage in 5 seconds. That combines very well with our Pride's Fall. But that also means we won't need the Avarice Band. So we can swap that out for a Ring of Royal Grandeur and actually equip the Pride's Fall as our helm. And then, in our armor slot, we can equip a Cinder Coat for resource cost reduction with fire skills, which is going to help us all around, and we'll explain why when we get to skills. Now, one thing to note is that you cannot wear the Cinder Coat. You don't have the option of cubing either the Pride's Fall or the Cinder Coat, because you need to get 12 max discipline as a secondary on your torso, and that could only happen on a cloak. And a Cinder Coat is a chest armor and not a cloak, so you have to cube the Cinder Coat, wear the Pride's Fall. That also means that we won't need a Boon of the Hoarder. So let's talk about our gems a little bit here. Currently, we have a Zay Stone of Vengeance. That works really well because we want to keep enemies far away, and we deal more damage to enemies that are far away with this gem. And we're also running with a Bane of the Powerful. Ideally, we'll want to try to maintain this bonus. That'll be easier to do in T13 Rifts when we're going to be chaining from elite to elite a lot more. In bounties, it might be a little bit more difficult to maintain this buff. And if you'll notice, we're actually not taking a Bane of the Trapped, even though it's arguably the best offensive gem in this game. And the reason being that our goal here, ideally, is to be killing everything in one shot. And with Bane of the Trapped on this build, it's only on the second shot that your opponents will be taking the extra damage from the Bane of the Trapped. We'll cover that more when we get to skills. That said, if you're not killing stuff in one shot, then you can definitely work in your Bane of the Trapped here. And if you're going to lose the Boon of the Hoarder, you can work in your Bane of the Trapped. But another gem you can work in is the Wreath of Lightning. That'll give you even more speed. It's up to you to determine what balance of speed and damage you want to manage. Alright, I know I just threw a lot of different options at you here. If you need to, pause, rewind the video. The beauty here, though, is that we have the options. Unhallowed Essence is such a powerful set. The multi-shot Demon Hunter is such a powerful build, and arguably the best, or one of the best, at the very least, speedrunning builds in this game. And it's great that you have some flexibility in how you want to specifically build your multi-shot Demon Hunter. But now let's take a look at the skills. So, we're going with multi-shot Arsenal in this case. In general, there are 3 main runes used for multi-shot: Arsenal, Full Broadside, and Wind Chill. For Greater Rift pushing, Arsenal and Full Broadside tend to be what's used. The two of these are almost equally good, but you can argue that at the absolute highest levels of play, Full Broadside outperforms Arsenal, and we fully dissect this in our video guide on the Greater Rift pushing variant of multi-shot. We'll link that at the end of the video. But specifically for our speedruns here, there's a couple of reasons why we're going to go with Arsenal over Wind Chill. With Wind Chill here, enemies that are hit are chilled and have an 8% increased chance to be crit for 3 seconds. Again, our goal is to one-shot most monsters. This is something that only applies on the second shot. Arsenal launches out rockets. We're going to try to max out our rocket damage and really just try to kill things immediately. We're going to take Vengeance Seethe and aim for 100% uptime on this. This will give us a huge Hatred regeneration buff and will make us deal a lot more damage. Next, we need to take Preparation Invigoration. This permanently increases our max discipline by 20, and again, for every point of discipline we have, and not just max, we're going to deal more damage. So we're going to want to try to maintain max discipline or close to max discipline and have our max discipline be as high as possible. For our generator, we'll take Evasive Fire Focus. Now, the reason we're taking Evasive Fire is because it is a shotgun spray really easy to hit enemies without really aiming. Just go in their general direction and you're going to hit something, and you need to hit an enemy in order to trigger one half of your focus and restraint. We take the focus rune because that gives us the most hatred. We're going to take Companion, Wolf Companion. That'll give us a nice damage buff when we call it out. But if you feel you don't need that extra damage, you can go instead with the Bat Companion. This will help us generate even more hatred and will serve as a hatred potion. Then lastly, we need that mobility power. We're going to take Vault and we're going to take Tumble here to minimize our resource expenditure. Vault is affected by the Pride's Fall Helm. However, if you're running with a Cinder Coat, then you can take Trail of Cinders, turning this into a fire skill, and it will also be affected by the resource cost reduction on your Cinder Coat. For bounties in which you really need to travel far, it becomes even more inviting to go for these options that allow you to vault a lot more with a high degree of resource management. For our passive skills, we're going to want Ballistics. That increases the damage of our rockets, which consists of a huge amount of the damage of our multishot. We're going to want Ambush. More damage to targets that are above 75% health. This will help us one-shot enemies. We'll want to take Blood Vengeance. We're going to be killing a lot of enemies and thus generating a good amount of health globes, and these health globes will also give us back not only hatred, but also discipline. That'll help us vault around more. And lastly, we'll take Tactical Advantage. Whenever you use Vault, you're going to gain a movement speed for 2 seconds. For the 5th passive that you get with your Hellfire Amulet, if you want to, you could go with Awareness, but you shouldn't really be dying too much, and that's a life of a Demon Hunter. Of a multi-shot Demon Hunter, you're going to be a Glass Cannon. So if you really want to max out your damage, you can go with Steady Aim. 20% more damage. There should never be enemies within 10 yards of us because that's our set bonus to begin with. So just a flat out 20% damage buff? Yes, please. You could, however, also take Thrill of the Hunt. Now, this is more if you are not killing things in one shot, and if you are going to be going with a Bane of the Trapped. So I should clarify, in the beginning when I said that Bane of the Trapped would not be dealing its added damage on your first hit, that's because I'm assuming that you're going to take Thrill of the Hunt, which will make it so that your second hit will apply the damage buff of your Bane of the Trapped. And you can also go with Hot Pursuit instead if you feel you don't need that added damage from Steady Aim. Alright, let's go back to looking at the gear. We'll go over exactly every stat you want on every piece of gear. I'll have a link in the video description to the D3 planner as a reference. Now, the cooldown breakpoint that you want to reach is about 36.6 repeating, of course, percent cooldown reduction. And the way to get this would be to max out cooldown reduction in your paragon points, wear a diamond in your helm, and then get 3 other items with cooldown reduction. And one easy place to do that is on your shoulders. This cooldown reduction is important in order to maintain, necessary even, to maintain 100% uptime on Vengeance. So for your shoulders, you definitely want dexterity and cooldown. Then apart from that, typically you would go for resource cost reduction and area damage if you were really pushing high greater rifts, but since we should be one-shotting things, we're not necessarily going to benefit from a whole lot of area damage, and we also have other sources of resource cost reduction, so it's okay if you get instead Vitality there and All Resist, but it's to your choice. For our helm, ideally we want Dex, Crit Chance, and Multishot damage. For our amulet, ideally Fire, Crit Chance, Crit Damage. For our gloves, ideally Dex, Crit Chance, Crit Damage, and Cooldown. This is another easy place to get cooldown reduction without sacrificing damage. For our chest, Dex, Vitality, Life Percent, and very important, Max Discipline. For our bracers, Fire, Dex, Vitality, Crit Chance. For our belt, Dex, Vitality, All Resist, Life Percent. For our pants, Dex, Vitality, All Resist. And in both our pants and our chest, we'll want to have emeralds for more dex and thus more damage. For our boots, Dex, Vitality, All Resist, Multi-Shot damage. For our rings, ideally, Crit Chance, Crit Damage, and then if you have an Ancient ring, Raw damage. If it's non-Ancient, then Dexterity would serve you better. On your bow, Dexterity, percent damage. Then as your last stat, you could roll even more resource cost reduction, or you could go with Attack Speed. And very important, Max Discipline. And for our offhand, ideally Dex, Attack Speed, Crit Chance, Multi-Shot damage, cooldown reduction, and very important, Max Discipline. For our Paragon points, we're going to want to start by maxing out our move speed, factoring in what we have on our gear, then dump everything into Dex. For offense, cooldown reduction first, then Crit Chance and Crit Damage, maintaining a 1-to-10 ratio between those two, factoring in your gear, then Attack Speed. For defense, Life, All Resist, Armor, Life Regen, And for utility, resource cost reduction, life per hit, area damage, and gold find. And that's going to wrap up this video. If you then want to take this build into greater rifts to push as far as you can, I encourage you to check out this guide here. I believe that Unhallowed Essence Multishot is the best build for Demon Hunters for greater rift pushing, not by a whole lot, but it is very strong. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider becoming a Royal Raider on Patreon, where your support is immensely appreciated. We've got a variety of backer rewards, including behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more Diablo content.